Well, it's AD 30, and it's event number 32, and it's found in both Matthew and in Mark. It's in Matthew 19, verses 1 through 12, and Mark chapter 10, verses 1 through 12. And you'll remember that Jesus has gone out to the outer area across the Jordan to the east, and great multitudes are following him, and the Pharisees are continuing to test him. And they ask him a question: is it lawful for any cause for a man to divorce his wife? Now, in Mark, it gets the order of the question and the answers just a little bit different. No difference in the answers, just in the order in which Jesus says the things. In the Mark account, he asks, what does the law of Moses say? And in Matthew, he says, well, how do you read what Moses said? And that's found in Deuteronomy 24, verses 1 through 4, where Moses has granted divorce because of the hardness of man's heart. So he quickly says, have you not read? That's kind of a slap in the Pharisees' face, because they're not reading their scriptures. It says, God created them male and female. By the way, while we're there, he didn't create them male, female, and 150 other different things. He created them male and female. And he says, for that cause man shall leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, and they become one flesh. Now, man and wife, the only relationship of marriage that God recognizes. And he also says they become one flesh, no longer two, but one. And what God has joined together, let no man separate. Now, again, when he answers the question about what Moses said, in Matthew, he says something very interesting. He says, because the hardness of your hearts, Moses permitted you to divorce wives, and then only for infidelity. And in the Mark account, he talks about the wives also divorcing their husbands and marrying another man, and the charge for either one is adultery. However, remember that adultery is a forgivable sin. It's not the unforgivable sin. And we also need to remember that it's the hardness of the heart that makes it difficult for man or woman to forgive a mate who has been unfaithful and broken that one union that no man should be able to separate. And so when the two are broken apart, and because of the infidelity, God has allowed divorce. That doesn't say that's his first choice. If their marriage can be reconciled and if forgiveness is possible because the heart's not that hardened, then he certainly encourages that. But we all know, having experienced this in families of our own, that many times the unfaithfulness is not once but multiple times, and the trustworthiness of the mate is not there, and therefore God allows that for the immorality of the situation. Remember, God created a man and a woman, not anything else. And he also says we should identify either as a male or a woman based on our actual gender. And because we join to a wife, we should try everything that we can to make it work. But if there is immorality, and it is one that cannot be reconciled because of the hardness of one or both hearts that are involved, then God does grant divorce, and divorce and remarriage is not the unforgivable sin. And so we need to remember all of this in its full context. We've touched on this subject once before, and you may want to look at every passage of Scripture that deals with divorce. And Jesus quickly mentioned that there are a few, because his disciples then asked him, well, wouldn't it be better not to marry than if it's that hard to separate? And he said, that's very hard for men to accept, or women to accept, except those that have become eunuchs either by birth or by man altering, and that they've been called to a singleness. and so that they can focus totally upon ministry. But very few people can do that. Most people need that companionship. They need that intimacy, and God recognizes that. So there's a few people that perhaps will never marry, but that's not the norm. And we certainly don't think that it's a good idea for couples just to live together. You either commit yourself to each other and commit yourself to faithfulness to each other, or you're better not to marry. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.